on my screen. Actually, I'm gonna pass it over to Richard. Richard, would you like to go ahead and give the floor over to Geoff?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. So it's already 7, so let's start it. My name is Richard O'Valley, and I'm the co-founder and speaker of Evolution of Leadership. And I don't want to give any spoilers, even though that our speaker is right here, but I would like to introduce a little of him. So tonight, he's a really individual that is really interesting. He's the founder of Dare to Serve, that is an organization in which he's encouraging youth, children, and of course, students to serve in the communities and create a positive impact on it. So I would like to introduce Geoff Reese. Thank you so much
Nice.
to be here tonight.
Awesome. You said it the right way. I appreciate that. It's spelled with the G. So, everyone kind of gets it wrong sometimes. So I always have to say, hey, it's spelled with the G, but said the right way. So anyways, hey, one thing I didn't think of this before, but wanted to let you guys know it was 7 o'clock and Emmanuel said, all right, it's 7 o'clock. We got to start. I've watched a few of these different recordings and you guys have started at 7. You've gotten to 9 o'clock and Angel or whoever, as a moderator says, okay, it's 9 o'clock. Well, 9 o'clock, depending upon where you are, 11 o'clock here, but it's 9 o'clock and we're done. And that's one of the things that I just really appreciate about you guys, about this group, about starting on time and ending on time, because very few people do that. They feel like, 7 o'clock, I can be there 7:05, 7:04 or whatever. But I was kind of always taught that if you're supposed to be somewhere, let's say, for example, you're supposed to be somewhere at 7 o'clock. If you show up at 7 o'clock, you're late, right? You really should show up at 6:55 if you really want to be on time. You got to get there early. But anyways, what I want to talk about tonight is, and I didn't necessarily prepare this, and I was looking at one of the recordings, and I don't know if this was a gal that you had. If she was on last week, was the was the lady from India? Is that who you had last week?
Sandhya, but
yeah.
it wasn't last week, no.
Well, okay, wasn't last week, it was some other time. Anyways, I was looking at that recording. What a rock star. Oh my gosh, she was like on it. She was nailing it, right? And the kids that she had with her were just like so impressive. I was like so excited about that. And I was really thinking about you guys, like, that's what you all are about, is like bringing up the next generation of leaders. I mean, you guys are wanting to be leaders, right? And I so appreciate this evolution of leadership platform that you have, to learn and to grow and to be inspired and to inspire others. But then to have, when she brought on some of those 16-year-old teenagers, right? That was like so impressive. And I thought, what a rock star. There's no way I can compare to that. And it immediately brought me into an issue. And tonight I'm going to share some personal things with you guys in terms of leadership. And you can ask me about stories later. You can ask me about what I did later or whatever. But I don't feel as though those are as important as sharing personal stories about my growth and what I've struggled through and how I've grown in different ways. But when I started to think of comparison to her and to the kids that were talking, one thing I thought, I can't do that. I'm not that way. I can't talk like that. And immediately I can get into a spiral of comparison. And however you want to say it, comparison is the thief of progression, or, there's other ways to say it or whatever. But it reminded me of a story of when it was several years ago. And it was in the Chicago area. We were talking earlier about I live in Texas, but I'm originally from the Chicago area. And so it was in Chicago, and we went to a large church. And a friend of mine named Tim approached me about the work that he was doing in the church. Now, he worked at IBM, but he was the 6th grade team leader. He was in charge of all of 6th grade. Now, we went to a large church, and so 6th grade was pretty large, 100 kids or so in there. He was ready to step down, and he said, Geoff, would you be interested? And I'm like, yeah, Tim, we'll talk about it or whatever. So we met for coffee one afternoon, and sitting in the booth, I remember Tim was sharing with me about what he was doing with 6th grade. And he was talking about the PowerPoints that he would bring, and the music list, and the things that he would have, you know, organized and set up for the kids and everything. And I started to feel so overwhelmed by all he was sharing. And I started internally, subconsciously comparing myself to Tim. I didn't tell Tim that right then, but I was comparing myself to Tim. Guys, if you hear nothing else tonight, and we could probably shut it off right now, because this is one of the key pieces of wisdom or advice that I've gotten in my life. Tim said to me, when I said to him, Tim, I can't do this. Look, you got PowerPoints, you got it all set up and everything. I'm not like that. I'm not that organized. He looked at me and said, Geoff, you're not me. Well, what do you mean? He goes, you're not me. Here's the deal. You can't be me because I'm me. So don't try to be me. Here's the deal. You be you. And you being you, you're going to be great. Because you're going to speak to a part of those kids that I haven't been able to impact and touch, right? And I thought, wow, that is so good. That's really about leadership, is you being you and not trying to be somebody else. You know, the question is, who would you rather people prefer you to be? You or someone you're pretending to be? And you ask that question for yourself. I think the answer is you, rather than someone you're pretending to be. But I've thought of that many times since. I thought, I can't do that. I'm not like that. And I stopped and I go, okay, wait a minute. No, I'm not like that. So you be you. I appreciate Tim saying that. And I've thought of that since. 2,400,000,000. If you do a quick search on leadership, that's the number of hits you're going to get. I think since then, that was a couple weeks ago, I think since then it's like 2,790,000,000 or something hits that come back in less than a week on leadership. So much information. It's hard to really drill down to the information that we're looking for in all of those hits. I used to meet with a guy named Zig Ziglar. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Zig Ziglar? If you haven't, you got to look him up. Zig Ziglar, goofy name. One of the prominent motivational speakers ever, written all kinds of books. He's passed on. He was a great guy, but I used to meet with Zig on Monday mornings. Me and a small group of guys would meet at Zig's office, and we'd have a little Bible study, and then Zig would wrap it up and he'd share some motivational thoughts and everything, and he'd talk about what he did. And I was just so excited to be there, you know, me with a few other guys, and Zig Ziglar, you know, this icon, this motivational icon. And he would talk about his lifestyle and the things that he would do. And he said that one of the things that he would do as a leader, he would carve out, and I don't know how he did it, but he would carve out 3 hours a day to read. Kid you not, this is what he said. He'd carve out 3 hours a day to read. And one of the things he said about reading, he said, I won't read it if I can't teach it. I won't read it if I can't teach it. So everything that Zig read had a purpose involved. He just didn't read for fun. He read for knowledge, and he read for the ability to teach it. So when you think of 2,400,000,000 hits on leadership, here's the reality. There is nothing new. You are really not going to find anything creative that no one's ever thought of before on leadership, because it's all been said. And so what I want to share with you tonight are some thoughts and some ideas of things that I've read and things that I've heard, and you kind of take that and you put it into your own life and how it affects you and how it's affected me. So those are some of the things that I want to share with you about leadership, and kind of weave that through some personal stories in my life. Taking all that information, it's hard to find what you really want in all of that. So let's drill it down to really just one word. Let's drill it down to vulnerability, being vulnerable. So I want to ask you, are you willing to go there? Are you willing to enter that arena? Are you ready to rumble, if you will, as the wrestling announcer says, right? Ready to rumble, whatever. I don't know what that guy says, right? Are you willing to be vulnerable? You know, we react to vulnerability, sometimes in a negative way. You know, we can feel like it's a dirty word. You can feel like maybe we're taken advantage of, or that we have a fear of exposure, right? I mean, vulnerability can create a lot of negative things within us. But really, vulnerability doesn't have to be a dirty word. There's a gal named Brene Brown. If you haven't heard of Brene Brown, and when I talk about concepts earlier, what I said about leadership, borrowing concepts of people's thought, Zig Ziglar is one of them. Brene Brown is another one. I go on a lot of long walks, a lot of long runs. Sometimes I have to drive a long way, and so reading a book is not convenient for me. So I have books on Audible, or I listen to books, and Brene Brown has some fantastic, incredible books that I continue to listen to. But here is Brene Brown's definition on vulnerability. Let me read this to you. She says the definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. But vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. When I said, do you want to get in the arena? Do you want to rumble? Are you really willing to step into that and wrestle with that? She says vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. When the barrier is our belief about vulnerability, the question becomes, are we willing to show up and be seen when we can't control the outcome? When the barrier to vulnerability is about safety, the question becomes, are we willing to create courageous spaces so we can be fully seen? I think that's necessary to repeat again. When the barrier is our belief about vulnerability, the question becomes, are we willing to show up and be seen when we can't control the outcome? When the barrier to vulnerability is about safety, the question becomes, are we willing to create courageous spaces so we can be fully seen? You see, that's what true vulnerability is. That's the other side of vulnerability. That's not the dirty side of vulnerability. It's the space of showing up. It's the space of being fully seen. That's sometimes a scary place to be. But you know, we fight back against that vulnerability, right? We don't want to be vulnerable. We say, no, it's for other people. It's not really for me. In fact, I don't really know if I need to be vulnerable. You know, I don't need to be vulnerable. Well, here's the question. Is there anyone that does not need to navigate uncertainty and risk on a daily basis? Let me ask it again. Is there anyone that does not need to navigate uncertainty and risk on a daily or regular basis? No, we all do. If we are entering leadership, uncertainty and risk is what we deal with, even in life. Even if you're not in a, quote, leadership role, uncertainty and risk is all around us, especially today. So that issue of vulnerability is necessary. Because if we're alive, we deal with vulnerability. If we're a leader, we deal with vulnerability every minute. We can't opt out of that. We can't a la carte that. Let me explain that. I was one day complaining about what I didn't have. I was complaining about what I wanted to have. I was comparing about whether what others had that I didn't have. And my wife looks at me and she says, Geoff, you can't a la carte life. I was like, what? She said, you can't a la carte life. What do you mean? She said, you can't pick and choose this from that person's life and that from that person's life because they got what they got. You're only picking the nice things of various people's lives. You're a la carte in life, right? You get what you get You deal with the cards you're dealt with, and you work with that. If you want something else, go get it. Go work for it. But don't a la carte life, because that's a very miserable place to be. I was like, that's freaking brilliant. I've thought of that many times since. Okay, wait a minute. I'm starting to a la carte life here. I can't do that. I can't pick and choose what I want from someone else's life and what I want in my life. I read a lot about leadership. I'm in some leadership roles. But talking about vulnerability is vulnerable. It's pretty scary. It's kind of a scary place to be, because one of the issues of being vulnerable, or talking about leadership, is the reality of, am I truthful to what I say? Am I a fraud? Am I going to be seen as a fraud? Are people going to say, no, that's not you? You don't really act like that, right? You don't walk the walk and talk the talk. I don't know if you guys have heard of a dude named Kenny Chesney. Kenny Chesney is a country country singer. And he sings about the normal stuff, about trucks and drinking and, you know, love and girls and, you know, being an all around country guy, great guy and everything. He married an actress named Renee Zellweger. And I think that marriage lasted about 200 days. I kid you not. They ended up getting a divorce. She filed for a divorce. And the reason that she filed divorce is because she said, Kenny Chesney's a fraud. Apparently his lyrics weren't matching up to the lifestyle that he was having in the marriage. So when we talk about vulnerability, when we talk about leadership, the question is, do your actions match up to your lyrics? Does what you talk about on a daily basis match up to your actions throughout the day? You talk about one thing and you act like another, right? So being vulnerable, are you willing to enter the arena? Are you willing to and ready to rumble? Or maybe you just want to play it safe and do the things that you've done all of your life to make things apparently work for you? Look, we're all afraid. We are all fragile. And we all have one thing in common, is that we hide. We all have that fear of vulnerability. It overtakes us. It affects our ability to lead. And we all revert back to that place of hiding. Now, go with me here for a minute. And I want to tell you where all of that started. Let's drill down to the Garden of Eden. Now, look, I'm not going to go all spiritual on you. Don't worry. I'm not going to start preaching and go into a big sermon and everything. But I think it's important to at least consider what may have happened at that point and where all of this hiding started. So here's a quick story. I'm sure you've heard of it before. The garden, the creation, the day, the night, Adam comes along, then the rib, and then the woman. And now they're in the garden. God comes along and says, hey, look at everything I created. Now go enjoy it. Have fun. Do whatever you want to do. Go wherever you want to do. It's beautiful. Take advantage of it. Subdue the garden. Be the leader that you need to be. You can go anywhere, eat anything. And well, actually, you can't eat of that tree. You can have anything you want, but don't eat of that tree. Well, apparently, that was okay with Adam and Eve, because I don't think there's any record about them complaining about not being able to eat from that tree, right? They could do wherever they want and go wherever they wanted, but they just couldn't eat from that tree. Well, you know the rest of the story. You know, the pesky snake comes along and tempts them and everything. And then they eat of the tree, and what happens? All of a sudden, their eyes are open. Now, before they were naked, and that was fine with them. They didn't even know that. Now, all of a sudden, their eyes are open. They recognize what? They recognize their vulnerability. They recognize what had happened to them. Now, what do? They go find some fig leaves or whatever, and they hide themselves because now they're exposed. They're vulnerable. What happens next? God comes walking through the garden. He's calling for Adam. Hey, Adam, where are you? Where's Adam? Adam says, I'm over here. God says, what the heck are you doing there? Adam says, I'm hiding. Why are you hiding? Well, I heard you walking and I was afraid because I was naked. So I hid. You see, if you want to believe it or not, I'm not saying you need to or whatever. I'm just telling you a story of the original hiding, that we all hide. We're all afraid. We all are afraid of that vulnerability. It's a condition that we're in that truly, if we remain there, we cannot be the men and women and leaders that we've been designed to be. We can't hide and continue to be a leader. Some people try to do it. You may see that today, right? All of a sudden things come out about people's lives and you're like, holy cow, I didn't know that. Why are you doing that? How can you do that? How can you be in front of people and then kind of have that secrecy, right? Well, people do. That is the kind of the dirty side of vulnerability. Now, let me share with you some personal stories. I said before that I've done a lot of leadership things, but I want to share with you some examples of some areas of vulnerability that had been created in my life, and really how it played out in shame, and that I've carried that shame with me for a long time. And it wasn't until I began to peel the onion and peel that stuff back that it started to make sense to me in terms of how I operated in life. So several years ago, before my mom died, she sent me this box. Now, I got the box here. Here's the box that my mom sent me. Literally, I've kept it. And in it was some interesting things that I'm going to share with you. Let's see, what do we have here? We have my baptism letter. I kept that. We have my high school letter from my Letterman's jacket. I don't know. Do you guys even do that anymore? I don't even think they have Letterman's jackets, but here's a letter from my high school jacket. Some interesting, oh, look at that. Isn't that cute? That's me in school. Look at that. I was a football player. How about that one? Check that one out. I like that. Let's see. Oh, here I was 5 years old. Check that out. Can you see that? Look at that. 5 years old. We got one more here I gotta show. It's old school. I think you guys will appreciate that. I don't know, all kinds of stuff in here. Oh, here's one. What was I? 7th grade, I think. Look at that. Here I am right up here. 7th grade. Can you see that? 7th grade. There I am right there. Now, I'm not proud of this. I was a knucklehead in school. This dude right here, if I could find this guy right here, his name's Yee. I was not nice to Mr. Yee. And wherever he is, I'm apologizing. I'm apologizing right now. Hey, you know, probably the most interesting thing in this whole, I was looking for a picture, I can't find it now. Probably the most interesting thing in this whole box that I want to share with you. Why she kept these, I have no idea. My report cards going all the way back to first grade. First grade. I think it's necessary probably to share some of these. Let's start with first grade. Here we go. First grade. My first grade report card. 1965 to 1966. Elmwood High School. And then they don't give out report cards anymore, I don't think. Our kids never got really report cards. It was all C's, minus C, and D's. First grade. And then what they would always do, they would always write a note on here to your parents. And then your parents would have to sign the back of it, if you can see that. So let me read this. This is first grade, y'all. Geoff has a tendency to waste his time. And unless I keep reminding him that his work must be finished and handed in, he seems to forget. And then it says something about, I need to study the word cards, blah, blah, blah. That's first grade. Let's jump to third grade. Oh, this is a good one. This must have been a good one because I got an extra note. There wasn't enough space to write on the card. So the teacher wrote a note to my parents. Grade C, C minus, D. I don't get it. I'm like, what is happening? So here's the note. I have noticed some positive changes in Geoff's attitude and schoolwork in the past few weeks. He's participating more in class and seems a bit more confident in himself. What did I say this is? Third grade. He's participating more and he's a bit more confident. Like, who was I? What in the world was happening? Hey, let's move to fourth grade here. It says C's, D's, C minus. I don't get this. Like, what was happening in my life? She says, I'm concerned about Geoff's lack of effort in school. I'd like to have a conference with you. Look, I grew up in a home, apparently, that my parents were involved. I don't know why this would ever be happening if you really had involved parents. What's this? This is sixth grade. Geoff's attitude and effort fluctuates. Geoff failed to turn in a leaf project and did not report on a bird. He failed unit tests on mechanics and electricity. And then it says something about the low grade for band was due to not having his instrument at school on band days. Like, what's up with that? I played the flute. I remember playing the flute. But apparently I wasn't bringing my instrument. I don't know. I don't know what's happening to that. It's like, I never seemed to really get it. It was always like kids understood things before I did. Now, we didn't have like ADD, diagnosis or anything back in the day. I'm sure I was, but it always seemed like I was just pushed along to the next grade, and no one would really help me. This is what I would do when I got my report card. I would take it out of, at the end of the year, I would take it out of this sleeve like this, and on the back, I would look at it, and on the back, it says, can you see there? It says where you're assigned to the next grade. I don't know if you can see this, but it says this is to certify that Geoff Reese is assigned to, and I would almost look at that like with one eye open because I was so confident I wasn't going to go to the next grade, and that would have, for some reason, that would have been devastating to me. That would have been horrible. But I always looked at that with one eye open. Assigned to, good, I get to go to grade 5. I can't believe it. I don't know, that stuff haunted me. When I moved on to my freshman year in high school, I developed this test anxiety. And I know where it happened. It started to happen here in elementary school, but it progressed into my high school years. And here's the deal, guys. If you don't deal with this stuff, if you don't deal with this crap, it's gonna follow you forever. And it developed in me in a sense of shame. There's a quote that says, if we don't deal with what cut us, or let me say it this way, if we don't deal with what hurt us, we'll bleed on those that didn't cut us. If we don't deal with what hurt us, we'll bleed on those that didn't cut us. Research shows that 85% of a person's personality is formed within the first 6 years of their life. First 6 years of our life, 85% of our personality is formed. That doesn't mean we can't change. Obviously, we have 15%, but that means we got to do a lot of work in understanding what developed in our life. what has happened. And we can't just put our head in the sand and bury our head in the sand and not deal with it. Let me share with you a few other stories of shame. I see them as shame that happened in my life. I mentioned to you about developing test anxiety in high school. It happened in my freshman year, in my algebra class. And how it played out was like this. I would be in algebra, and I was doing fine. I got great grades in algebra. In fact, I got all A's in algebra on the homework. Because the way it worked out in algebra is that they would give you the homework, and then we would have books, algebra books, and we'd take the algebra book home, and we would do a certain lesson, but all the answers to those questions were in the back of the book. Well, what do you think I would do? I'd just write all the answers down. I'd take the questions and write them all down, the answers down. You go back to class, hand them in, get an A and everything. Easy peasy. I'm like, who doesn't do this? This is like the easiest thing in the world. Well, what do you think happened come to test time? Now, well, I flunked every test. I didn't know how to do the work because I didn't study, because I cheated. I thought that was the easiest way to do it. And so what would happen was, when we'd go back after the test, we'd get in class, the teacher would hand out the test. One by one, we'd sit in rows from front to back, and I always sat in the back. We didn't have assigned seats. I didn't want to sit in the front. I didn't like sitting that close to the front, excuse me. And so what would happen is, one by one, we'd start in the front, and each person would take a question. Take question 1, take question 2, take question 3, take question 4, and so on. Well, I would count how many questions it came to me, and I'd start to try to figure out the answer. Naturally, I couldn't. And so as it came 1, 2, 3, 4, my anxiety started to increase. I started to get more anxious, more nervous, more scared. The more scared I got, the less I could think. By the time it came to me, and each person would have to go to the front of the class, stand at the board, work out the problem. The only thing I could do is write out the problem on the chalkboard. I would write out the problem on the chalkboard. Like, I'm gonna turn my back to you. I'd write out the problem on the chalkboard, and I would stand there. I would just stare at the chalkboard. And the teacher would say, well, can you multiply blah, blah, blah? I couldn't add 2 plus 2. I didn't know what was going on. I stood there forever. Well, try to multiply that. I couldn't even multiply that. And then people would start to giggle. And then naturally what would happen, there's, somebody in every class that obviously knows every answer. He would say, oh, Sally, just go up and finish the problem for him. And I'd go sit down. I really, truly believe that's how my test anxiety started. Now, even to this day, that test anxiety can wreck me if I don't keep it in check. I'm just being vulnerable with y'all about how it works for me in this issue of shame and how it's played out my life. Even to this day, when I'm sitting, this is crazy. When I'm sitting like maybe in a circle of people and we're going around introducing ourselves, what do you think happens to me? I don't get it. It just happens. Each person that starts coming closer and closer, the more anxious I get. And I'm not saying I can't talk when it comes to me. I can. Obviously, I'm a blabber. I've wrestled with working it out, but it can really wreck me. I'll just be totally honest with you. Even tonight, days before tonight, what do you think I started to do? Today's what, the 15th? The 10th. It's the 10th. It's the 11th. Oh, it's the 12th. That anxiety was increasing. What do you think happened today? It's 9 o'clock. It's 10 a.m. Oh, snap. 6 p.m., 7. What? That stuff can really cripple me if I don't get a hold on it. See, that's how it's worked out for me. Well, The issues continued in high school. I move on to my sophomore year. I transferred schools the second half of my sophomore year. Now, it's not like I wasn't liked in high school. I don't know what the deal was. I was an athlete. I had a lot of friends. I joked around a lot. And so here I am at a new school, sophomore year. We're sitting in class. Back in the day, we had, teachers do this now, but you watch films or movies in class. But back in the day, we had these film projectors. I'm sure you've seen them, literally film. And so you'd have two reels on this film projector. You'd have a front one, and that had film on it that wound out through the projector and round and went on the back reel. And the film would go through as you'd watch it, and it would empty on the front and it would collect on the back. And so when the movie was over, to rewind it onto the front, you would lift the back reel up so the two were like this outside of the machine. So they were just, the film was like this. And then you would flip a button and this back reel would start to unload through here onto the front one. And by the time it got to the front one, it would go slow. But as this front one got more film on it, this back one would just start to go faster and faster, and then the front one would go faster. And so you would have to then flip the switch and turn it off. Well, what happened was I was sitting next to the film projector. Teacher was going to leave, he had to go do something. The movie was over. He flipped the switch to rewind it, and he said, "I'll be right back," as this rewinds. Well, he didn't come back soon enough. It had come off of the back reel. I didn't know how to turn it off. I'm sitting next to the projector just like this, and I put my hand up to try to stop the reel. What happened was it started wrapping around my hand. And like it was coming off the reel, now wrapping around my hand. And the class was pandemonium. The kids were freaking out, and I was freaking out. The girls were screaming and everything. And then they were laughing at me, and the teacher comes back in, turns the light on, he goes, "Oh my God, I got all this film wrapped around my hand." Well, to me, that was just a shameful event. That was embarrassing. That just continued that level of anxiety about being made fun of, like I was in freshman class. So how it continued to play out for me is I get to my junior year, my high school advisor calls me into his office. We take our ACT test. By the way, one of the things that was in that box was a copy of my ACT score. What? Like, I want to see that. Like I got a 2 on it or something. It was ridiculous. He calls me into his office and he says, "Geoff, I want to talk to you." Well, I had an attitude. I had long hair. I sat down in his chair, slumped. I said, "Yeah, I want to talk to you about your ACT score." I go, "Yeah, so you didn't do very well." I said, "Like, that's news to me, and like I care." I mean, that's the attitude I had. And he said, "Well, let me tell you, no one's going to accept you in life." I didn't care what he said because, I was having fun, partying, doing drugs, running around with my guys, causing trouble, breaking into cars, stealing, doing stupid stuff. I didn't realize how much that affected me until later in life, until I really drilled down to the fact that he said, "No one's going to accept you." Wow, that was such a key thing in my life. It started way in first grade. About whatever I was doing or not doing in school. I don't know what was happening. Finally, I get to college. I was a baseball player, loved baseball, and I walked on a scholarship team. I didn't have a scholarship, but I walked on a scholarship team and made it. So I'm on this team. And so I hung out with all the baseball guys, all the athletes, baseball friends, whatever, we were in the dorm. But what I would do was, when we'd be in the dorm hanging out, we'd play video games, not the video games you have now, it's like Kong or something like that, right? Mario Brothers, that was the big one we had. And I was going to go back to my room. I would leave the room. I would shut the door, and I would stand and listen at the door. I would put my ear to the door to see if they were talking about me, to see if they were saying things about me. That's how it all played out for me. That's how that shame and that insecurity and that vulnerability on the dirty side played out for me. I didn't like it. I didn't know what it was, but that's what I was dealing with. You see, the reason I'm sharing this is because it's necessary to get into the arena. It's necessary to do the hard work. It's necessary to understand your life. You got a couple options. You can sit on the sidelines where it's comfortable, or you can be in the arena fighting it out. You see, there's a lot of risks in that arena. You can fail. It cannot work out for you. But the rewards are so great. When you get to the point of dealing with those issues and learning about yourself and learning about leadership and learning about how that through you can affect other people in a positive way, great things can happen. And that's what it's like and all about being in the arena. So let me finish up with sharing with you 3 types of people that live in 3 worlds. And we're all in one of these worlds. We're all one of these 3 types of people. When I was in Texas, shortly after we moved down here in 2007, 2008, something like that, I was working with a bunch of gang kids in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, why gang kids? I wasn't ever in a gang per se. I was doing a lot of dirty work, doing a lot of stupid things. We were breaking into cars and stealing stuff. I had a brother that was a city cop, another brother that was a lawyer. So I always got out of stuff. I never got arrested. It's close, but my brother always came to the rescue. And so gang kids, troubled kids, these were all kids that I resonated with, because it was a little bit like me. I was causing trouble and making bad choices, bad decisions. In fact, one thing I didn't share with you is I actually flunked out of school. When that guy said no one's going to accept you, I was like, yeah, well, we'll see about that. So I applied to a junior college and got in, but then flunked out my my freshman year. That's a whole nother story. But when we were in Texas, so I was working with gang kids, and we wanted to put on an event for these kids and for the community. So we rented out, I rented out a baseball stadium, and I brought this one dude to Texas named Nicky Cruz. Now, Nicky Cruz was a notorious, at the time back in the 60s, and by the way, he's got a movie made about his name called The Cross and the Switchblade. I'd encourage you to watch that movie. It's pretty good. I don't know if you can find it on Netflix or YouTube or whatever. It's an old school movie. I don't think it's in color. It might be black and white. It's got goofy characters and music, but a great movie called Cross and Switchblade. And he was a notorious gang leader in New York City. Leader of, I think their gang was called the Mau Mau's or something. Anyways, Nicky had changed his life. He had gotten out of the gang. He had left, and now he had this ministry, and he was traveling around speaking. And so we wanted to bring Nicky into Fort Worth for this youth event at this baseball stadium. So we brought Nicky in, and I spoke, and Nicky spoke, and everything. But the night before the event, my wife and I go out to dinner with Nicky. We're sitting there, and I say, "Hey, Nicky, tell me what changed for you? Like, you were the leader of this notorious gang. What changed for you?" He said, "I tell you what, there's 3 types of people." He said kids, but there's 3 types of people in life. And we'll get into this. But the first kid is a kid just doesn't give a crap. The second type of kid is a kid that acts like they do, but they don't. And the third type is like me, that really wants to listen, that really wants to change and make a difference in their life. Those are the 3 types of kids. So let's drill it down. Let's unpack that a little bit in terms of what Nicky was talking about. And this is where I was saying earlier about there's nothing new under the sun. This information, these concepts have been spoken before. They've been shared. It might be new to you, but they're out there. People have talked about these types of worlds that we live in, or the types of people that we are. but I want to share it with you in this way. So the first type is as I said, the person that doesn't give a crap. It's otherwise known as the world of not enough. They live in a world of not enough. That they're kind of like a tourist. You've seen tourists. You've been probably a tourist before. What does a tourist do? They go to a place and they just look at a lot of stuff. They don't really engage too much in the environment. They're just a tourist. They're just there to observe. That's what these people are. In the world of not enough, you're just an observer. They let other people define them because they're not strong enough to define themselves. It's kind of a world where the field is never level for them. Nothing's ever fair for them. Everything happens to them. They complain a lot. They're angry. They're never grateful. It's kind of actually, honestly, the dirty side of vulnerability. They make a lot of excuses. It's something that I call excuse-itis. As I said, I flunked out of college, but by God's grace, I got back into school. Even more so, I went to graduate school. That's a complete joke. Me in graduate school, I didn't like school at all. But I believed that God had a bigger plan for me and wanted me to go to school. So I went to grad school. I got a master's degree in counseling. I got out of school and I got into a private practice doing marriage and family counseling and working with adolescents, drug and alcohol addicted adolescents, a lot like me. I worked in locked facilities. I went to jails and locked hospitals and worked with adolescents, many of which were like me. But in my private practice, people would come in and they'd sit down and we'd have a conversation and I'd do the whole counseling thing. And then I would offer some sort of, homework for them to do. Invariably, they would come back not having done the homework. Well, I would say, well, where's your homework? Well, let's look at that. I didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Oh, I got involved in so many things. I had to do so many things. They just made so many excuses. And it was something that I ended up calling, they had a problem called excuse-itis. Is that everything in life is an excuse? And this is that world of not enough. Everything happens to them. They've got an excuse for everything. It's the dirty side of vulnerability. The second world is kind of a world that I call a world of false promise. They make a lot of false promises. You know these people. Maybe you do it. I do it too. You say, yeah, I'll get to it. Do you ever get to it? No. Oh, yeah, I'll be there. Oh, it sounds great. Do you go? No. You make a lot of false promises. You agree, this person agrees that they need to do something, but they never get around to it. They never do it. It's a world of just enough. They live in a world of just enough. I got just enough to get by. I've said this before. You know, all I really need, all I really want is just enough money to pay my bills. I'm fine. I don't need more. Just enough money to pay my bills. Everything happens for them. They kind of wait around for things to happen for them. The first person, everything happens to them. This person, everything happens for them. They live in a world of luck. It's kind of a lucky, well, I was lucky there. Ooh, the stars lined up for me there. Procrastination tends to live in this world for them. They always procrastinate. Never quite getting around to it. I'll wait till the last minute if I do it at all. Strangely enough, this person is comfortable here. They're kind of like an amateur. They're living life for fun. And it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, you can get comfortable here because nothing much is really required of you. The first person, they don't really care if anything's required of them. They're not going to do anything anyways. This type of person, nothing really is required of them because they just really kind of got what they want and got what they need, and enough is enough. This is a life of drift. It's a dangerous place to be. Very dangerous. Let me explain to you drift. I don't know if you've ever been to the ocean before. And you want to go swim at the ocean or in the ocean. And so you put your blanket and all your stuff down on the beach and you got all your stuff there. You go in the water and you're swimming in the water and you're having fun. And all of a sudden you look up and you're like, somebody jacked my blanket. All my stuff's gone. Well, no, your stuff's not gone. It's just that you drifted down the shoreline to where you're not in front of your blanket and where all your stuff was, but you're confused. How did I really get here? You see, that's a life of drift. It's a very dangerous place to be because many people get to that place of not being sure how they got to the point of where they are in life. But again, strangely enough, they're okay to be there. It's like this world of how bad does it need to hurt for you to do something? It's an example of this farmer sitting on his porch and he's rocking. He's got his dog next to him. His dog's making a bunch of noise, kind of howling. And this other farmer comes walking down the road in front of him and he looks up and says, "Hey, mister, what's your dog doing?" The guy looks down and says, "Yeah, he's making some noise." The other guy outside, "What's he howling about?" "Yeah, he's making some noise." "Yeah, but what's he howling about?" Guy looks down and says, "Oh, he's sitting on a nail." The other guy says, "Why doesn't he get off that nail?" Farmer looks down. "I guess it don't hurt bad enough." The reality is, how bad is it going to hurt for you to get off that nail? We don't do things until it really hurts. And you know, it's happened in your life. It's happened in my life too. I'm okay when things are okay. But when they really start to hurt, that's when it's like game time. Whoa, better do something about it, right? It's kind of like a life adrift. We're not sure how we got there. And we don't get off the nail until it hurts bad enough. When I was doing coaching after I'd got out of private practice and I was doing life coaching with different individuals, so one guy called me and he needed help to try to figure out what to do in life. I'm like, okay, great, let's talk about it. So we chat on the phone. He was this crazy, uber successful salesman. And he'd been doing it for a long time. And so as we began to unpack his story, he was telling me that this was the same job that he's had since college, but he doesn't like it. I'm like, well, what don't you like about it? He goes, I don't know. I don't even know how I got here. I don't even like being a salesman. As we begin to unpack that further, he realized that I've been doing this my whole life. And I don't really like it. But it was the first job that I took, and I was good at it. And I thought, I'll do it for a while, and then I'll do something else. Then he never did something else. Just continued to do it. Till he got to a point where it's like, I don't really even like this. And I don't know how I got here. That's exactly what drift is like. He drifted into a lifestyle that he didn't like, and where he was at. He wanted to get out of, but he didn't know how to get out. You see, that is the world of just enough, the world of false promise. It's a very dangerous place to be. And the third and final world is, let's call it a person that fails forward. Fails forward. What do I mean by that? We all fail. In fact, I want to say to you, I have more undoubtedly failed more than I've succeeded. I've failed at more things than I've succeeded. But I think maybe I've learned from more of the failures than I have the successes in my life. And so we're all failing in some sense. Actually, if you look at the research on walking is really falling down. It's really falling down, because we are falling down at every moment of walking. The only reason we don't fall down is we put the other foot in front of us. The reason that children fall down, other than maybe they don't have the balance and their legs aren't strong enough yet, their brain is not capable of sending the signal fast enough to their feet to move, to save them from walking down. We don't think about it now, but we just put one foot in front of the other. We're constantly falling forward. And we're constantly every day failing. So the question is, are we willing to take action to make a difference in our life? Are we willing to be vulnerable? This is otherwise known as a world of more than enough. Because we have more than enough in life where we're willing and able to serve other people. Things happen through these type of people. They don't happen to them. They don't happen for them. They happen through them. They have more than enough, and so they're willing to give. They're willing to serve. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're willing to get into the arena and wrestle and rumble. They're not chasing victory and success because they believe that all of that will take care of itself. I made some serious mistakes earlier in my life. And honestly, I do now, but I made some serious mistakes earlier in life by chasing success, by chasing money, right? By chasing the deal, because I thought I had to have it. When you realize you don't have to and it'll just come to you, then you're willing to relax a little bit more. You've heard that analogy about holding a bird in your hand, you know, and you want to save it, you want to keep it safe, but you squeeze it so much that you actually crush the bird because you're not willing to open your hand and let it go. This is that person, and I'm almost done, but this is the type of person that moves forward in consistency in a steady way and is confident of their vulnerability and their ability to be consistent and steady. There was an old sailor out on the sea, and he had this young apprentice with him. And this storm comes up, lightning, thunder, and the waves are huge and everything. And the apprentice he's got his hands on the wheel, and the old sailor is standing right next to him, you know, with the pipe in his mouth. And the young guy's like, we're gonna die, you know, the waves are too big. And the old sailor's just patting him on the shoulder. He says, it's okay. And the young guy goes, what are we gonna do? We're gonna die. And the old sailor says, son, steady as she goes, steady as she goes. And that was it. Steady as she goes. Just remain calm, breathe, steady as she goes. This is an individual that is playing to win in a professional way. Not in a way that I beat you, but that we win together. I've helped you in some way to win. Zig Ziglar, who I mentioned earlier, has a quote that says, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. Say it again. If you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. It's getting in the ring by choice. It's showing up by choice. There are no regrets. We take advantage of opportunities presented to us. There's some research by, and I'll finish with this, research by some Cornell grad students on regret. And they found out that there's two types of regret. There's short-term regret and there's long-term regret. The short-term regret is those quick decisions that we make. I should have turned left. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. The long-term regret is the regret of omission, is the regret of lost opportunities. And they found out that individuals only regret, they regret short-term regrets 14% of the time. It's the long-term regrets that they regret 86% of the time. They regret those missed opportunities, those what ifs, those could haves, those should haves, those, man, that opportunity was there, I should have taken it. So in the words of the German author Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, he says, hell begins the day God grants you the vision to see all that you could have done, should have done, and would have done but did not do. You nor I want to get to the end of our life and say, if only I would have shown up. If only I would have shown up. So here's the deal. I want to challenge you. Let's do the hard work together. Let's hold each other accountable. Let's get into the arena and let's rumble. Let's do that because we're all going to be better people in the end if we do that. And let's not get to the end and say, if I'd only shown up. So there you go. There you have it. I'm ready for questions.
That was interesting. A lot of stories about your life. Thank you for sharing, Geoff.
Yeah.
I bet Geoff.
That's all right.
Yeah, kind of rolls off the tongue. But
Yeah.
yeah, everyone, the event is gonna be on YouTube. I'm actually gonna share the YouTube channel here in the chat. So if you guys wanna check it out, we should be there by at least next week. And yeah, Alexis, Richard, do you guys have anything to say?
Yeah, I kind of just want to go into it. So I just want the audience to kind of understand that when leading, this is kind of like the nitty gritty that you have to do, the internal work that has to be done in order to have a good, firm feet on the ground. From then on, you could start going off of that. So again, this is very personal things, but it is very powerful. This is what breaks limiting beliefs, whether it's through culture, whether it's through upbringing, whether it's through past traumas, because that happens too. And I commend Geoff for sharing that because it's not easy. I'm sure we all have a portion of what we have to overcome that it's quite difficult. It's very, like you said, it's a weak point. You can poke at it,
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy, and I feel very it's very human, so thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It's as I've look, I'm 61 and I don't know it all. I'm still learning, and you guys are in your Alexis, how old are you?
21.
All right, you're in your early 20s, and you've got a long way to go. And hopefully, I still have a long way to go, and I'm still learning. And I wrestled with these things a long time, and it wasn't until really later in life that I really started to uncover a lot of this stuff. Now, I went to graduate school and I was a counselor and dealing with people's lives, but I had my own crap that I was dealing with that I refused to take a look at until later in life. And I was like, whoa, I could have helped a lot more people if I'd have been a lot more honest with myself, and not spent that time hiding. So yeah.
I could agree. I honestly, I've kind of had the same exercise of what you just did. It's beginning to present. It's like, whoa, okay, what happened? What happened there? And yeah, it's I'm still kind of analyzing, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wonderful. Cool. So yeah, let's move on to the Q&A session, guys. Anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Viri, looks like you have your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes. Well, I don't really have a question yet. So, for now, honestly, I just want to thank you for sharing your story. And I personally, I'm in the same road as you on my way to being a school counselor. And
Nice.
a side career in motivational speaking, and honestly, I couldn't really connect with you and your story because I've always been that girl where she's always shy, she never talks, she never speaks her mind, always afraid to like express her thoughts and everything. And I still struggle to this day. Um and as I grow, honestly, I some to where I'm supposed to be, even though I struggle with many situations or circumstances sometimes, it really sometimes helps you see of what you have. And honestly, I commend you for that, for sharing your story. I know personally it's difficult to open to people you barely know,
Mhm.
like, outside of from your family. But yeah, if anything, I aspire to have that confidence someday and be able to speak my mind with such a great way to express yourself to so many people and such young lives, honestly.
Mm.
Um, so to um, my question would be, someone who is planning to be someone who is super different from what she was in her past, what can you advise on like opening up and be able to achieve to have that confidence to
Hmm.
speak?
Well, it's I say your name. How do you say it?
Just call me Vidi for short.
Vivi.
It's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Well, let me say this. Just by doing what you did is evidence of your ability and confidence in yourself. I'm not going to ask you what it is, Vidi. There's something that you've done that you have felt, wow, I did that, right? Look at you smiling. I don't know what that is. You can draw, you can sing, you can walk in a certain way, you can dance. I don't know, I'm not a dancer. You can play an instrument. You got a great smile. There's something that you've done that you have felt accomplished by. So here's the reality. You've got greatness. You're a genius. And I don't mean that in the sense of educationally, right? I mean, you might be. I don't know. I'm not by any means. I already shared that with you. I'll share more of my report cards if you want to see them. But that's not what a genius is. A genius is something inside someone that's beautiful. And so you've got something that you've done that you can do more of, and that you can take that almost as a piece of encouragement. Let me say this. We all have times in our life that we feel discouraged and down. The gremlins show up, the limited beliefs, what Alexis was saying. I shared those at the beginning, just even of now, of saying, I can't talk like that. Who cares? Who's going to listen to me? I don't have anything to say. What? That stuff all shows up in all of us, right? So have an imaginary cookie jar. And in that cookie jar, you begin to put little cookies in. And these cookies are little accomplishments that you've done in life, little things that you can do, have done, want to do, feel confident in doing, that you want to, that you've had a little successes in. And every time you start to think, I can't do that, then you can reach into that cookie jar and say, oh, no, I can. See, here's that cookie. I'm going to take this cookie right here, and I'm going to have confidence in what I've done. Even if it's little, even if no one knows it, I know it because I've felt it and I've seen it. And so you're asking the question, how do you have more confidence? Well, you already do. Let me just tell you, it's already within you. You might just not have seen it, but just use those very little things to be able to grow and mature. And then you step out and you're like, that's a little scary there, right? That's too far out there. I don't know, but I did it. Then you step back into your comfort zone. That's cool. Be in your comfort zone. Then you step out a little bit. You start to stretch. And that's what lifting weights is about. And that's what exercise is about, right? And that's what school is about, right? You get into those areas of uncomfortable living and stretching yourself outside of that comfort zone. So I hope that helps a little.
It did. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me share it to you this way. Let me make this little drawing, I'm not a good drawer. I'm gonna draw these 4 boxes. Hope you understand this. Here's one box, another box, 4 boxes. Have y'all heard of a dude named Roger Bannister? Roger Bannister, you ever heard of him?
I haven't.
He's the guy that broke, the first guy that ever broke the 4-minute mile. No one had ever done it. No one had ever ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Well, Roger Bannister wanted to do it. So it was in the 1950s, 1955, I think. He thought, I'm gonna try that. It's outside of my comfort zone. No one's ever done it, but that doesn't mean I can't do it. Well, what do you think Roger Bannister did? Did he go out and run a mile? No. He had to begin to have a little bit more than, everyone says, oh, you got to have belief in yourself. Okay, well, belief is fine, but I can't believe I'm going to fly an airplane if I don't know how to fly an airplane, right? I'm not going to be an astronaut if I haven't done that, no matter what type of belief I have. He had to have a certainty, more than just a belief, but a certainty that he could accomplish that. And what did he have to have a little bit of certainty in? He had to have a little certainty in potential. Bad writing. Potential. Had to have a little bit more of a belief, but a certainty in his potential. And because he began to believe in his potential, what did he do? Well, if you're going to do anything, you got to take action. So he took action. Okay. And what did he do? Did he take, if I'm not a physics guy, but probably somebody is here. There's a concept, I think, or a theory of the ball doesn't come off the wall any faster than what you throw the ball at the wall. Is that true? Something like that, right? I think. It's not going to come off the wall any faster than what you throw the ball at the wall. My point is, you give a little bit of action, you get results. But if you give a little bit of action, what type of results do you get?
A little bit.
You get just a little bit of results, right? You give massive action, what do you begin to get? You begin to get massive results. You begin to get better results. And those results foster, that's belief. Those results begin to foster belief. And that belief begins to increase your belief in your certainty and your potential, which creates greater action, which creates greater results, which creates greater certainty, potential, action, results. You see what I'm doing here? It's a cycle. Roger Bannister, no one had run a 4-minute mile before. Roger Bannister says, I'm going to do it. I think it's 1955. He went out and he did it. His time was 3 minutes, 59 seconds and some odd, whatever. It was under 4 minutes. He did it. No one had ever done it. Within, I think, 40 days, I think it was. I think 2 other people broke the 4-minute mile. No one had done it until Roger Bannister did it. And then other people did it. So when you ask the question, how do I break out of my shell, or how do I open up? You just do it. You just have confidence and a certainty in something, in your potential, and you take action, you get results, you have greater belief, and so on. And so I'm pretty sure that if Roger Bannister wouldn't have broken the 4-minute mile, somebody would have. But he did. And because he did, other people did. So here's another piece of encouragement, is that it's not just for you, right? If you only think of all the stuff's for me, you're missing the point. It's for others. See, leadership is not about you. It's not about me. Leadership is about others. However, it has to be about me also. So we have to do the hard work in order to impact the other people.
Makes sense. So, Geoff, I actually do have a question for you.
Yeah.
You spoke a lot about vulnerability and the importance of being vulnerable. I believe that many of us have the fear of becoming vulnerable. So how do we conquer that fear?
Well, let me put it this way. Choose your hard. You see, life is hard. It's hard to be overweight. It's also hard to work out. It's hard to eat healthy, right? But it's also hard to pay the money to eat healthy, to buy the good stuff. But here's the reality, life is hard. So you got to choose your hard. Either way, it's going to be hard, right? So the reality is, what are you choosing? So when you say, excuse me, I need to be vulnerable or deal with vulnerability, how do I do that? Well, it's hard to do that, but it's also hard just to hide. So you got to choose that hard and then understand the benefit of that. What are the benefits of that? Really, if you don't see any benefit in it, you're honestly not going to do it. You got to see the benefit in being vulnerable. Now, when I speak of vulnerability, I don't mean just, and I shared a lot of dirty laundry tonight. I don't necessarily mean digging out your report cards and going, show people, let me show you what I did in 3rd grade. I really suck, man. No, you don't do that, but you pick those things that are beneficial to yourself and to other people. So there's a movie, if you haven't seen it, it's with Bill Murray. It's called Baby Steps. I'm not going to get into the whole movie, but watch it. Bill Murray has a psychological issue. He's obsessive compulsive, and he goes to see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist helps him, but mainly he helps him to understand baby steps. And he needs to get from the guy's office to the elevator. And how does he do that? Well, he takes one step at a time. Just baby steps. You just got to take baby steps. So you're not going to just jump into this world of vulnerability, you got to go there slowly. You got to understand the value of it all. Let me read this definition to you again by Brene Brown of vulnerability. The definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. But vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. When the barrier is our belief about vulnerability, the question becomes, are we willing to show up and be seen when we can't control the outcome? When the barrier to vulnerability is about safety, the question becomes, are we willing to create courageous spaces so we can be fully seen? It's about being courageous. That's really the bottom line. So you can hide or you can be courageous. And choose your heart.
Awesome. Thank you, Geoff. Any other questions from anyone else? I do have another question too.
Awesome.
So, as a founder of a nonprofit, I would like to ask you, just in case someone who's looking to start a nonprofit might be watching this later on YouTube, because I do have a friend who would like to start a nonprofit in the future. What do you feel has worked best for you, and how do you go about setting up a nonprofit?
What was the first bit? How do I feel what?
What do you feel has worked best for you?
Oh, well, there's something that's called staying in your lane, right? Is recognizing, is recognizing what you're called to do, and what you feel most passionate about, almost as if you want to call it your why. Simon Sinek has a book called Start With Your Why. I've used a lot of his stuff. In fact, I used to have a podcast called Wake Up Your Why. It was a lot of fun, but that's for a story for a different day. But it's about understanding, why are you doing what you do? You really have to drill down to that. You really have to understand why do you want to do what you do? Why do you want to do a nonprofit? You see, a lot of people know, a lot of people can explain what they do. Some people can explain how they do it. There's not a lot of people that can explain why they do what they do. Being in a nonprofit is no joke. It's almost every sense of the word nonprofit, right? You're not selling widgets. You're not getting rich. I guess some people do, depending upon how they spin it, how they work it out, whatever. But it's really for the greater good of people. And so you got to figure out why you do what you do. Now, in terms of starting one, it's the same thing as anything else. First of all, you got to figure that passion out, that why, and then you got to just take the steps. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I wanted to do and what I felt called to do. And because I felt passionate about that, I felt a drive to do it. And once you feel that drive to do it, then you have more of a reason to accomplish that. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot more that goes into that answer in terms of how do you do that. But that's why Google becomes your friend, or you pay people to set it up for you. But you got to have that passion. You got to have that understanding of why. So why you want to do it.
That makes sense. And I do agree with you, Geoff. You have to have the passion, because if you don't have the passion, if something goes wrong, you quit immediately. But if you do have the passion, when something goes wrong, you try to figure out how it went wrong and how you can improve it for the next time.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Hopefully my question is going to be the last one. Before I'm going ahead, anyone else? Just in case. Well, I'm going to start. So for example, you were talking about the vulnerability and the problems in life. So in base of your experience and perspective, for someone that doesn't really know, doesn't have the knowledge about leadership, how to have that kind of control of their minds, coping, adversities, what is the best advice for someone that doesn't have the knowledge and want to start being a leader? but also, for personal problems, society problems, they don't feel capable enough, or they feel that, okay, you know what, I don't have what it needs to be to become a leader. So in base of your perspective, how can someone start being a leader?
Well, first of all, we're all leaders. Regardless of leading a 1,000, employee company, or a company of one, or a person of one, or just your family, right? Or just yourself. We're all leaders. We're leading in some fashion. It has to do with a couple things. It has to do with, what do you want to focus on? And once you begin to focus on something, you become more attracted to that. It might be a little bit back to your question, Emmanuel. What does a person do to start? It has also a lot to do with focus. Where's our attention at? What do we focus on in life? We can become distracted in a lot of different ways. And I will personally say the stories that I shared with you were stories of distraction. And we have to be, another quote that Zig Ziglar says is that we have to be persistently consistent and consistently persistent. Consistently persistent and persistently consistent. So if you hold your thumb out in front of you and you stare at your thumb, and your thumb's in focus, and you can see everything else that's going on around you, but it's kind of blurry, right? You have things happening over here. I can feel the fan, and I got a light going on. My paper's fluttering because of the fan, right? But if I've got this focus on my thumb's in focus. Well, once I begin to now become distracted by this paper blowing and the fan wind, my thumb becomes out of focus. You see, this is what I really need to be doing, right? I don't need to be looking at my paper. I need to be looking at my thumb. And so we need to have that focus on where we want to go. There's something called the reticular activating system. It's in the base of our brain. It's that part of our brain that allows us to focus, right? It's similar to if you buy a yellow Volkswagen, now all of a sudden, what do you begin to see? There's like a freaking million yellow Volkswagens all over town. If I tell you to think of the color red, what are you going to be thinking about? You're going to be thinking of the color red. It's the part of our brain, in the base of our brain. I see you nodding your head there, Alexis. That creates that focus for us. And once you begin to focus on something, then you begin to attract that, right? You begin to bring that closer to you. And so you got to be careful what you focus on. Got to be careful what you want, because you will attract that, right? There's another quote that says, we are the sum of like the 5 closest people around us. You got to be careful who you attract. You got to be careful who your friends are. And so our life has motion. So we have this reticular activating system, but there's also something in life called teleology. You can look it up. It's T-E-L-E-O-L-O-G-Y, teleology. The main basis definition of the word teleology says that life is in motion. Life has purpose. There's an end result to everything, right? So we're not just static. We're not just people that are just stuck in one place. We're moving. Life is movement. So when I talk about choose your heart, where do you want to move? What do you want to do? Right? What response do you want to get? What outcome do you want to have? It all has to do with the action you take, what you focus on, and where you want to be in life. Because we're all moving. Teleology says that. It was coined by Aristotle. And so you begin to ask your question is, well, then where do I want my life to end up? And what movement do I have to make to get there, to make that happen? So there's more to that, but that's the basic of it. Hey, why are you shaking your head so much, Alexis?
Because I've heard of reticular activation system.
Nice.
I know about this. I don't know many people that talk about it. Where did you get that from?
You know what? I don't know. Again, when I was saying at the beginning, there's nothing new under the sun. There are no new concepts. I heard it. I was reading a book. I read it. Actually, I tell you what, I read it in a book called, oh, you'll enjoy this book if you want to read it. It's called In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day. I can't remember the author's name. It's more of a little bit of a Christian book, but it talks about being in a pit and about this dude named Benaiah. Benaiah is a character in the Bible. He's only mentioned one time, but the story of Benaiah is that he chased a lion into a pit and killed it with his own hands. Who does that on a snowy day? Who does that? So the book's about, what are your lions? Who are you slaying? What are you slaying? Not who, but I mean, what are you slaying? What lions do you need to overcome? And it talks about focus and attention, and it talks about the reticular activating system. That's where I read it. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just adding on to that because a lot of people like they go into like the spirituality of it and whatnot. This kind of crazy concept, that was presented back in the day of the book called The Secret. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's you talk about it, but did they ever it's science. It's not something that's woo woo or it comes out of thin air. It's like, no, man, like that exists. Like there's a reason why, and nobody really talks about like the reality of it. And that always kind of bothers me when people like kind of touch on it, but they don't go full circle. You need, the reality of it and the life experience, to mesh, or it just becomes a little, Right.
Yeah. It has no meat to it or no real concept if you don't really drill it down and also make it personal. So.
Yeah. Like I have a difficult time, when people present concepts that are a little bit more on the spiritual side, but they touch a little bit on the scientific portion of it. A lot of people believe in crystals, and they believe in the vibrations of it. But when are they gonna come on, get an experiment going? I want to know. I mean, it's cool if it works. It works. Like I'm not denying it, but I want both. I want both. Proof and.
Hey, here's aside from that, here's something else that I think you guys will appreciate. You have to operate under rule number 6. You ever heard of rule number 6? No?
No.
Okay. There were a couple prime ministers in a room that were talking. And one of the prime minister's aides, interns, if you will, she came running in. Mr. Prime Minister, oh no, what are we gonna do? It's crazy, things are falling apart. I can't figure out how to keep control. I can't figure out what to do. And she said, the Prime Minister said, Julie, what have we talked about? What? Remember rule number 6. Yes, that's right. She gained composure and she walked out of the room with no problem. The 2 prime ministers went on talking. Ben comes running in. Mr. Prime Minister, I don't know what to do. Things are falling apart. I don't have an answer to this. Oh no, please help me. And he said, young Ben, you remember what we talked about? What? Rule number 6. Yes, thank you. Regained composure and he walked out of the room. The other prime minister looked at him and he said, Mr. Prime Minister, 2 of these people have run in with their hair on fire, not knowing what to do. and you speak of this rule number 6 and they regain composure and walk out, please, may I ask you, what is rule number 6? And the Prime Minister says, oh, rule number 6 is, well, that guy actually swears, but I won't. Rule number 6 is, don't take yourself so damn seriously. And the other guy says, oh, what are the other rules? And the Prime Minister says, there are no other rules. I've thought of that many times. Like, look, seriously, don't take yourself so seriously, right? I mean, you got to remain composed. You got to be consistent. Steady as she goes, boys. Steady as she goes, you know? So.
Amazing.
Awesome. Thank you, Geoff. Any final questions?
I think I heard that in a movie.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah.
you probably did. See, I didn't make it up. There's nothing new under the sun. You got to
I'm just
borrow.
like,
You got to borrow concepts, work them into your life, and there you go. You learn from it. I don't know what movie you would have heard it in, but
I think I heard it in like one of the Fast and the Furious movies.
That's really interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I should definitely check that out later. Rule number 6.
Yeah.
But
Look it up. Rule number 6. You'll find the story.
we do so. So Alexis, you wanna move on with the close?
Yeah. I just kind of want to thank Geoff. It's really interesting. I thought it was the way you think. It's very razor sharp, and I appreciate that. I kind of have similar takes on how you presented today.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Would you have any last words?
Oh, no, I just, I want to encourage you guys for doing this, because honestly, this is the leadership that we need. I think, who in the world, what kind of people are growing up these days? And, you know, I don't want to be like, oh, back in the day, you know, we were the greatest and everything. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that we need people like you. So bravo, encourage you guys to continue this this trend, this desire of thirst and wanting more. So just keep it up.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so from there, I kind of just want to go into the upcoming event we're going to have, VD. So I'm just going to present a little bit to you and see, you know, kind of inform you a little bit. But yeah,
sure.
Thank you, Geoff, for hopping on. Appreciate your time. It was really nice just knowing that somebody out here has a similar thought process. I'm like, well, okay, cool. Yeah, I totally agree with that 100%. There's just, you know, a lot of people go into, oh, which generation's better. It's like, nah, man, like we're all a little messed up in some way. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
no generation's perfect.
No.
You know? And you know, it's just recognizing that. I appreciate that. That's kind of in there too. I'm like, oh, okay, nice.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to get to the presentation. I hope you have a great night, Geoff. Appreciate your time. And I'm going to transition with VD. Cool. All right. So VD,